Welcome to Soulful Living. I'm Phillip Mountrose with Jane Mountrose and our special guest, Ruth Anderson. You're in the Soulful Living show for open-minded people like you who want more joy, meaning, and prosperity in your lives. Jane and I, we've had 3 decades of experience in holistic coaching and healing. We're published authors, trainers, coaches, founders of IAHP, International Association of Holistic Practitioners, and founders of Awakenings Institute, a nonprofit organization devoted to making the world a more loving place for each individual. Today, we're very fortunate to have our special guest, Ruth Anderson, on, talking about letting all that love isn't fall away. A wonderful topic here on Valentine's Day if you're live or listening at any time. And we think this will be another takeaway strategy you can use today, this week, and ongoing. And we welcome you, Ruth Anderson. Welcome to the show, founder of Enlightened World Network. And I want to give a little intro about you. Ruth, you want to say anything too? I want to give you kind of a little formal intro, but do you want to say anything just to start with?
I am so pleased to be here with you today. Thank you for asking me to be on.
You bet. Ruth is the founder of Enlightened World Network, an award-winning author. She did have a rewarding career as a special education teacher, educator, which I also had, by the way, too, and school administration as well. And now she has a second calling, and that is becoming a reverend of the Church of Inner Light. And she was given a ministry to witness and participate in the healing of souls and with and without bodies in the ethereal realm, called Open Witness, Open Clinic, Open Clinic. Mm-hmm. Ruth serves as a conduit for the spiritual divinity and shares their teachings in an authentic and open manner. Her overarching mission is for teaching heaven to earth, to bring that to heaven to earth, which is similar to Jane and our mission, and helping others know their spiritual divinity. Hey, Ruth, welcome back to Soulful Living and letting all love that isn't fall away today.
Thank you, Phillip.
Or all that isn't love fall away.
What brought you to that subject?
I received that message in meditation, and it was such a beautiful meditation. And the words were, "Let all that isn't love fall away." And I heard it from my creator, my guide, and I wrote it down, and I have used that so many times because it just helps to alleviate all of the angst that we go through in daily life. If you could just remember that, to let all that isn't love fall away, it clears up so much that doesn't have to be a big deal.
No, I love that too. It's just so, it is, like you said, so simple. We think it is like embracing love is so difficult in a divine love sense, which I don't personally, but I know that as people starting out, often that is a big challenge. And it just, that saying it that way is just so soothing, I guess, and inviting.
Well, I certainly took it to heart. I use that all the time. Yeah.
How do you use it?
And I think that's one of the things with Soulful Living. One of our ideas of the show is to have actually a statement that people can repeat. Like that each show is based on a statement that you can use. Like you can write that on a post-it and put it on your refrigerator, or just remember it. And I think that is one that I will use along with some of my other favorites. I think it's beautiful.
How do you use it, Ruth?
I have 2 teenage daughters, so I get a lot of practice using that. Not only for myself, but to remind them that these little things that bug us about each other, it doesn't have to be anything. It really doesn't have to mean anything. We can just let it go and just remember the soul essence of who it is that we're talking with. So I use it actually.
So you use it regularly. How has it played out in your life, that theme?
Well, especially with the girls, but also in business, you know, in dealings with Enlightened World Network. We're all people. And as people, sometimes we get our feelings hurt, right? And so just to remind ourselves that really all we are called to do is to love each other. That's it. Just show up and love each other. And just remembering that with Enlightened World, it just smooths over anything that could be an issue.
Yeah. It was, I don't know, a few years ago at least now, I asked myself the question, how would I define love? And it's interesting in a divine love sense, of course, not not primal love, but the word that came to me is that love is connectedness. It is the absence of separation. In other words, meaning by connectedness, then it would mean that it's connectedness with all that is, with your source. And also, I think from experience, it's connectedness with your most resourceful state to be in. Like, we're most resourceful when we're in that place of connectedness. And like you were saying, when there are challenging situations, we have to really rise up to the occasion. And that's an interesting, I never thought of that phrase, rise to the occasion, as being something like that, but actually that makes sense in a different way than I ever understood that before. That we want to elevate our own state so that we can be in a place where we can be resourceful and fair and kind.
Right. And I love that you brought up the definition of love, or how we view it, because to me, when I think of love, I think of grace. And I know we've spoken about grace before on some of the other shows, but to me, grace is acceptance of who that person is and what they're trying to get across, or, you know, what they're trying to do. And it's also grace in loving yourself, to be able to stop and think, okay, well, I think that's pushing my buttons, but I'm right. I'm just going to hold myself here and see if I can figure out what that is. But grace to me is huge as far as love goes. And to me, grace is another way of seeing that connectedness.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I like that word too. It's a beautiful
How do you
word.
see that playing out, Ruth, grace in your life? I mean, how do people, know they're in a state of grace or evoke that?
So I used to be a school district administrator, and I was a director of human resources. And for a while, I was the one that had to fire people. And they would say to me that I fired people with a velvet glove. And I cannot tell you how many people, is that Buddy? I can't tell you how many people, after I let them go, gave me a hug. So it's just caring for that person in whatever situation, seeing them as a person with feelings, and just being careful with them.
Ruth, we may have lost your video. I'm not sure if you can get us back on with that. There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, seeing them more as a representation and manifestation of love, rather than something other or less than or separated.
Right.
I like that.
And sometimes people aren't coming from that place of truth with who they are too, but that is not, it's interesting because we take that personally too. If someone's having a hard day or whatever it is that's causing them to be in a state that is not that resourceful, we take it personally when actually they're the ones who are experiencing pain. And if we can be coming from a place of love, there's also that phrase, it takes two to tango. Because if you respond, in a polarity, then it's like that you're doing the dance. It's not a real pleasant one. Whereas if you can stay in that place of love, which is not polarized, then you're able to actually, in many cases, help the situation to shift, help the other person to shift, or at very least remove yourself from it as a personal, in a person seeing it in a personal way.
I totally agree. And I love that we're talking about love on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right. So at least here in the States, a lot of folks celebrate Valentine's Day. But to me, one of the unfair parts of Valentine's Day is our culture plays it up so much that those who aren't in a love relationship often feel kind of left out on that. So I guess I'd like to look at love a little bit differently today, a little bit broader, not just a love relationship with a partner or a spouse, but really love relationship with yourself and with your guides, with your creator, with you, the universe, whatever you want to feel that love for.
Right. And what's an example? How would you feel that? How would that play out?
To me, kindness is so essential. I think we all have the ability to either make somebody's day better or make somebody's day worse. And I really try to make other people's day better, whether it's somebody at the grocery store or the gas station or, the mailman, whatever. I just try to make everybody's day a little better. And to me, that's love and that's grace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree there too. And that's something that I used to be extremely shy. And at a certain point, I decided that to set a goal of talking to people in public more, saying hello. And also then I thought of complimenting them in a genuine way. And it's interesting because it doesn't have to be a big thing. It might be something like, well, that's such a joyful dress you have on, or your hair looks so nice. Or and people, they usually light right up. I think one of the things I thought was, who would care what I say? But they do, they light up, and it does. I think, like you were saying, if we can contribute to having people have a good day and loving themselves more, I think that's a real gift.
It is. And so much of life is little things. You kind of look at your day, review your day, and that's recommended, of course, to review your day at the end of the day, maybe before you retire. A lot of it is little events, but there were little sparks. There were little sparks of joy and love. Sometimes in the smallest things, an exchange between you maybe and your dog, or you and a person, like Ruth was saying, maybe at the cash register, especially if you had an intention to connect with the person more meaningfully, more lovingly, more openly. And that's much of your life when you kind of look back at it as those little collected moments, those string of pearls, those string of jewels that makes grace and love.
Yeah.
Ruth, would you like to kind of further comment on, you're as the curator and founder of Enlightened World Network, a very active site on Facebook. What have you noticed there? How has this played out, for your experience there? And that, because that's a large part of your world now.
Right, it is. So when I was first learning about my own intuition, I was so lonesome, Philip, because there was nobody I could talk to. And I would ask, I worked with Archangel Michael an awful lot. And I would say, I want a mentor. I just want somebody to be able to tell me what I've experienced and what I'm going through and what I'm going to experience. Then Archangel Michael said, there is no one in a body that can tell you what you have experienced or what you are going to experience, because we are the ones that are creating your curriculum. your spiritual curriculum. And I was so lonesome, even though I knew that he was right. And so much of what Enlightened World Network is wanting to create is a safe community for people to connect with each other and to be able to start a sentence without saying something like, I know this sounds crazy, but, and I feel really good that Enlightened World has created a very safe community for people to come and to learn by watching shows like yours, to be able to meditate together every day. We have a live guided meditation, and to be able to reach out and have those conversations. I don't want anybody to ever feel as lonely as I did. And I feel like we are sharing love and grace in that way by giving people a safe place.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're doing a
I
good
think
job
that's
of that.
true for sure. Yeah. And I think that's why we feel actually honored and delighted to be part of it.
Yes.
We love having you all here.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
just wondering if that's such a powerful affirmation about letting all that love isn't fall away, if that has occurred to you at a certain time or someone, how that's played out practically maybe in your life.
Well, you know, when we talk about let all that isn't love fall away. Since the beginning of the year, I've had 4 different people say, if it wasn't for Enlightened World, I wouldn't be here. And I believe that to be true. And I'm getting goosebumps even saying it, that there are people feeling a great deal of despair and isolation, and they really do need that connection with folks. And by them letting go of those things that aren't love, they were able to stay around a little bit longer. So I have, yes, I've seen it in very fruitful ways.
Right. Yeah, you're providing a very valuable service and a community, a safe community there, and helping people remember higher truths and connection. Because we're in this world of suffering and vale of tears and separation, and a lot is not what it seems, but it's a lot of struggle, a lot of hostility. Obviously, violence and fear is more prevalent when you kind of look around in what's broadcast. And yet the deeper, more meaningful, where we're all going is more toward the message of letting love all fall away and learning how to do that.
Yep. And I wanted to share something with you, Philip. In meditation a couple weeks ago, I was shown something. A friend of mine was really struggling. Her mother passed of COVID a couple days after my mother did, and their rooms were 2 doors down. So
Wow.
I knew her family. I knew them. We'd been through a lot together. But she was holding such guilt and shame and blame and judgment for her mother's passing, even though they were both in, dementia care and both in their 90s. And when I spoke with her, I could literally see in my mind's eye 4 pillars in front of her: shame and blame and guilt and judgment. And it was like she couldn't see through them because she had created this jail that she was in. And so she and I spoke, and I started asking her questions about things like, okay, what do you believe to be true about your mother's passing, right? Where's the guilt coming from? And where is the shame coming from? And where is the blame coming from? And as we started looking at each of those topics, we realized the things that she was believing weren't necessarily true, that she had built this prison for herself on things that weren't true.
Yep.
And so we really spent a lot of time talking about that self-love and questioning the things you think you know, and questioning the things you think you believe. And where did you even come up with those ideas from anyway?
Right.
And it was a beautiful gift to be able to help her release some of those pillars. Well, some of them, the pillars got smaller and she could actually see around them or see over them. And then we also said, you could get up in the morning and instead of looking at the pillars in front of you, you could look to the right and decide to sidestep the pillars for that day, or you could go to the left and ignore them and say, okay, I'll come back to the pillars if I need to, but maybe I won't need to. But it was a beautiful gift of love she was able to give herself to question everything she thought she knew about that particular situation.
Right. Yeah. And to me, the part of the relevance of the word love and really the idea of connecting with the love in our hearts is that that's where we connect with our truth too. There's that idea, well, follow your heart. And in those times, if we practice that, and it also to me is heart and soul, it is like that's that soulful part of us connects there. When we're in that place of being in a loving place, then it is that soul shines through us in our observations and inspirations and the way that we're viewing things, which is different from what's happening if we're hiding behind some pillars or whatever it is that's happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
If we can shift into that place. And you mentioned before that no one can know what something in your life means to you. No one who's living alive. I think also you can find that truth in your heart too, because your soul designed your plan along with some, those in the higher dimensions before you were born, and that is being orchestrated by all those angels and guides who are around us right now. So you can tap into that too and get your own sense of what the deeper meaning of the events of your life are about. That's something that Philip and I we're actually going to do a little writing on that this week about life plan.
Mhm.
That we have a life plan, and there are things we don't understand how the pieces fit together in it if we're looking at externals, but we can start to connect with what is available to us. And that can really help to shift our way of perceiving what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. My guides have been working with me a lot recently on our
Excuse me.
soul's curriculum, that each
Right.
of us have our own curriculum
Right.
and no need to compare or compete with
Well, you
anybody
can't.
else. You can't.
No, because
Yes,
it's all unique.
right. It is all unique, and it goes until the moment you die. Right?
Right.
It isn't just in your 40s to 60s. It literally goes till the moment that you die.
Right.
So, yeah.
And it follows your path, because there may be places where you could choose different directions, and it will follow where you're going and then work with that as kind of the basis of what comes next and how that's going to play out. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
angels are up there kind of just trying to push us in the right direction. When we get those little proddings that then become bigger and bigger if we're not paying
Mm-hmm.
attention.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we do all have free will. Thank goodness.
Right.
We can say no at any moment. But I almost wonder, if we say no to this, will they still teach us those lessons, but in a different way? I think at the end of the day, at the end of our life, we still have learned probably the same lessons, but maybe just on a different roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing. I think if we choose one path or another, the same lessons are going to follow us wherever we're going. And
Right.
they're going to be still trying to move us forward in whatever way our souls have determined for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think so.
I think that whole thing is fascinating. I did a personal session with a woman just recently, and she had for her whole life she was very concerned about what people thought of her and just afraid to express herself for fear that someone would be unhappy with it. And this was something in our sessions that we were working with, and I decided finally that we needed to go back and look at the source of that, because you don't always have to find out, go like belabor things and find out where they started. But I think there are times when we do, because time, the continuum of time is following a certain path because of things that have been recurring in our lives going back, sometimes way back. And that also is then that continuum is going out into the future and taking a certain direction because maybe we haven't cleared whatever the block is. So in that case, we actually took a number of steps back to get all the way to the source, and she ended up in Ireland, and she was actually drowned because of the beliefs that she was expressing that were not popular. And I think I had one of the most relevant past lives that I had was being burned at the stake as a witch. And there are probably so many people like us who have had some variation on that we have to overcome.
Right.
And I talked with her about it today, and she said it was just completely different now. It was something when we were talking about it, and you never know what's going to click, but we were talking and we were talking about how when we had cleared the block, that was in the past now. Her life wasn't that way. And the interesting thing is, like, we call the process that kind of stepping back and finding things change history. Like, if you change your perspective on the original event, then the whole flow is going in a different direction. So your future now is different. Your present is different, and your future is different.
Yes.
She said she kept thinking that was in the past. It's not even that way anymore.
Right.
And plus, that was so profound.
Right. Plus, it can heal generations back.
Right. Yeah, this was way back.
Right.
Yeah, and another thing I thought about that, just since we're on that topic, and I think probably a lot of people, and women in particular, can relate to having felt that way all their lives, and possibly there is something back there somewhere that started it. That I realized after I had integrated that experience that it was, for me, expressing myself was life or death. I mean, it was a life or death matter. I was so afraid. I mean, I couldn't have probably just told myself, well, let all that isn't love fall away, because I was just so immersed in it. And the fear, that's that real kind of, instinctive fear that then is becoming associated with your spiritual awareness and development and your ability to share. So I think there are so many profound revelations that we can have when we can reach into the higher realms and get some of those insights, like you were saying too with your friend. It can change the whole trajectory that we're on.
Yes. Well, and Jane, you're reminding me, sometimes the work is, we can so easily do it within ourselves. And I was talking with a friend the other day, and she was just kind of stuck in her spiritual walk. And it was because she was afraid. And she could tell me clearly why she was afraid. She was afraid. She was learning how to channel. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to block it. I said, why do you want to block that? And she said, because I'm afraid I'm going to learn something about myself that I don't want to know.
Oh, yeah.
And so we spent a little bit of time, and we spoke to her inner child, which, she can now do by herself. But in so doing, she was able to love her inner child and let her inner child know that she wasn't going to let anything happen to that inner child to traumatize it even more. And we asked her guides, channeling is great, but please don't show her anything that is going to traumatize her. And when we looked at her inner child, she was immediately older and bigger and more comfortable.
Right.
But that's something people can even do by themselves without having somebody guide them through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it also helps to let people know that what you're going to find is that the limitations are the illusion, and love and magnificence are the truth. And it is, like you said, no comparison. Each of us is just a uniquely magnificent spiritual being that we're growing into, into actually understanding and being able to bring that sense of who we are down into our lives fully. But it is not ever that there's something wrong with you, ever, because the truth of who we are is love. So how could there be anything wrong with that? It is everything that you're asking, and that's another reason I think that statement is so profound. Let all that isn't love fall away. It is also let all that isn't true fall away, and love is the only truth if you narrow it down.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a great profound insight channeling. I really love that. I think a lot of people can use that because it sort of stops thoughts and trying to figure things out and knowing, quote, what's happening, just staying in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the moment, you're present. And when you're present, your soul is active. And when your soul is active, you are connected with the source much more directly. And you're connected with what you're here to do and learn, which, is the reason why you want everything that isn't love to fall away, so you're not distracted and hurt and tortured. Even though, in previous lives, especially for a lot of people, or even earlier in this life, they were traumatized, they were objectively punished, tortured, killed, like the millions of people on earth today and throughout history for going against the status quo, which is, was probably very fearful, repressive, distorted, is part of the learning environment here on the earth.
Right. Yeah. And
I know
I
of
think, oh, go ahead.
I know of so many light workers who firmly believe in an alternate life they were murdered for sharing the same things that they're currently sharing now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you have to be able to express yourself. You have to be able to clear that the blockage with that. And I with the inner child part also, I think it's helpful to understand that when the inner child is fearful and wounded, that means that part of the self, it's a part of you that has been disconnected from the truth.
Right.
So the goal then is to reconnect with that part, with the truth, which is love. And sometimes it can all it needs sometimes is to have a big hug, and let the inner child know that you love him or her, because
Yeah.
that they feel again separate and alone, and fearful.
Yes, I have seen that work so beautifully with so many people. Yeah, it's a great technique.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it seems like it's a necessary part of the journey at some point too. I remember at one point, and this was before I actually understood, and I think I wasn't ready yet, but I remember thinking, well, I know my parents did the best they could. So, I'm sure I don't have any inner child issues. And so then at another point, then I started having dreams, and it started with a young baby actually who was angry with me because I wasn't seeing her. And so I went through that, and I actually did process through that and cleared the block. And then there was another one. She was like 4 years old. So I kept having dreams of these children who were unhappy with me. And I had to go back and find out why. And so even if we're able to accept the fact that we were, that things happened, and think that we might have cleared them, that doesn't mean that we did.
Or there's another layer there
Right.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of layers. Yes.
Right. And it isn't, it isn't where I was, 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 w which was, well, because I knew my parents did the best they could. I had an alcoholic father, so it was not real close, to ideal, obviously, but I didn't resent that. I wasn't actually, I guess I wasn't a person who tended to hold grudges or anything. But even that doesn't mean that the child wasn't wounded. You might think that that's it, but that isn't all that's there. And then you
Right.
feel that hurt and know that it's tracking back to something.
Well, I think you also believe the same thing that I do, that we're here to learn and that we've
Right.
set up the experiences before we come into this world. So you knew what was going to happen.
Right.
You knew who he was and what he was there for. And I think that helps when people are, wondering how invested to be in the hurt emotions. That helps.
Right. Right. And then there are planes that are playing through, and that's why to me, karma also is, I see it a little differently than a lot of people. I see karma as parts of ourselves who we haven't accepted.
Mm.
And I used to, when I was a child and even into adulthood, I had recurring dreams, and they took different forms, but someone would be chasing me, and there was no way I could get away from them. Or it might be a monster, it might be like this dark figure on a motorcycle, or it might be an ape. It could be, they were just all kinds of things. I remember an ape coming up. I was trying to escape it, and it came up through the drain in the bathtub. This is when I was a little girl. I just remember, and it was over and over and over. And then finally I had a dream, and this was some years ago now, and there was a dark figure following me down the street at night. And I thought, well, I'm going to duck into my car and I'm going to hide, and that person couldn't possibly find me. So of course the person showed up at the window, and I looked at the person, and then I woke up, and I always would wake up when they caught me. And then I went back to asking what the dream was about. And that was it, that I wasn't able to face the wound. So it would just keep trying to come back and have me get the lesson.
Right.
And we don't know what that is, but I think as we're able to clear that, that's how we clear karma. That's just the way I understand. That's what my guidance has told me, and it is a little different, but I think the karma isn't actually anything specifically that someone did to you. It's more how you responded to it, bringing that back into balance and wholeness within yourself. So it's not like if that whole thing, like if someone needs to kill you, you need to kill them, or
Right. Right. I think that's fascinating, Jane. I think we all have our recurring dreams where we're working through one of our major life issues. And mine was always the same. I would go into a classroom and I had to take the final. I didn't even know I was in the class. It was that you're not prepared.
Yeah, so disoriented.
You are not prepared for this. And then what I realized, one of my major life goals, one of my major life lessons was something that came down through my father's ancestry line, which is the belief that your best is none too good.
Yeah.
And so I have worked through that many times. And I finally, like your client, got to the point where I was able to clear it generations back to where it started from. And then all of the generations after that were free of it, including my father and me.
Right. Yeah. And then so your future is also clear of it now. And that's the whole thing, like you were saying about there being a purpose of having lessons.
What
And
was the
so
lesson?
we often say we call them obstacles. Those obstacles are opportunities. They're not there to hurt us. They're actually there to provide an opportunity for us to grow and to actually be happier and more whole.
What was the lesson, Ruth, from that dream?
You are not prepared. Your best.
What did you learn? I mean, what was the discovery, or what was the resolution of it?
It was that it had come down through my father's ancestry that your best is none too good. It came down from my father. It came down from his father. It came down
Got that.
from.
So what was the other end of it, the resolution of it?
I realized for me that it was impacting me, and I had nothing to do with its originating, but I was on the receiving end of it coming down through the family lore. So yeah, but my being able to go back and heal it generations back freed up all of us, even those that have passed away.
Yeah.
You mean changing your orientation towards your life in some way?
And healing for them as well.
Healing for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've had a similar dream, and I'm just curious how it is similar. I mean, it's a similar dream. I don't know if it's being in a kind of a college setting and not knowing the schedule, not knowing the classes, not being prepared, being very chaotic and disoriented. So therefore never sort of being on top of the situation.
Right.
You know, sort of kind of a lack of control.
Right. And mine was always, it was my fault. You know, somehow I didn't know that I was signed up for the class.
Right.
I'd missed every lecture and it was my fault, but here I had to take the exam. Yeah.
Yeah. So really the important thing to understand is what the belief is. Like you were saying, the belief that whatever you're doing, it's not good enough, and that's what needs to shift, because it is, again, it's not that there's something wrong with us. It's that we imagine something's wrong with us, and that prevents us from allowing the wonderful truth of who we are to flow through us.
Yeah, right. And for me, which may be similar to Ruth's, I'm not sure, it's having to be prepared, which I'm actually someone who does prepare quite a bit, but like kind of never being prepared enough, never being ready enough. So it's kind of like you're always behind the 8 ball, you're always inadequate,
Right.
and you're not, letting go and letting love and remembering the love, the theme of the show today.
Right. Yeah.
Trusting.
Because it is, if you do believe that love is the truth of who we are, then it's all of those parts of us that are fearful, and there are often many of them within us, or have whatever it is, which really boils down to fear and separation in the end anyhow. As those different parts come back to us, that's when we can really embrace ourselves more. And Philip and I, actually, we met many, many years ago in a spiritual organization, and one of their basic ideas, which is a very good one, is being present in the moment and not expressing negativity. The problem was they didn't have any way to clear the negativity, so that meant repress your negativity, which had some disastrous effects at times. And that was eventually what led us to actually leave that situation and go out and seek the truth for ourselves. But it's so interesting, because it has to be a real letting go. It can't be just pretending like I'm not afraid, when you actually are. Or I feel great about myself, when down deep that there's a little voice inside of you saying you're not good enough, you're not good enough.
Right. And I don't think that being a light worker is about spiritual bypassing. I don't. I think
meaning what? Spiritual bypassing?
That if you just go sit with your guides, that la la la, everything is fine.
Oh, right.
I don't think it is. I just think it means that we aren't alone while we're trying to work through our stuff. We have support and guidance for working through our stuff.
Yeah. We often look at that as a balance between the spiritual and the earthly. You know, like all I have to do is think more light, you know, and everything's going to be okay. But it's not actually, that doesn't always work. When it works, that's great. But you also have to come back down to earth and say, okay, so how is this actually playing out in my life? Because if you do it from a perspective that you're not looking, and you're not going to find out that there's something bad about you, you're going to find out that you had a misunderstanding somewhere. You just need to unlock, unlock that and let it go. Then it makes it easier. But it can't be just about thinking that we can kind of pretend that none of this is happening here, and everything's going to come into wholeness.
Right. We still are in a physical body. We do need to have our feet on the ground as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think in the end, the most beautiful thing is to bring spirit fully into form, and to see people blossoming and to be part of that. I just think that's the best, and give ourselves room for that to happen, allow ourselves not feeling like we have to be perfect, or we have to be perfect spiritual, like have to dress right and speak right, do everything right to be spiritual and to really live.
Right.
Ruth, do you want to let people know how to connect with you further?
Yes, please. So folks can see the work that we do at Enlightened World Network on Facebook and on YouTube. And our website is www.enlightenedworld.online.
Okay, I'll put that in the comments here. www.enlightenedworld.network online.
No, not network.
Enlightenedworld.online.
Oh, okay. There is no network.
Right.
www.enlightenedworld.online.
Yes.
Okay, very good. You've been a great guest again, very gracious and insightful as usual. We love Enlightened World Network, what you're doing over there. Any final comments on letting all that love is not fall away?
I think just remembering grace and the truth of who you are. Grace, love, and the truth of who you are. And if those can be your three pillars, go with those. Go with those rather than the shame, the blame, the guilt, and the judgment.
Good choice.
Thank you, Ruth. That's beautiful.
Thanks, Ruth. So this was another episode of Soulful Living with Phillip Mountrose, me, and Jane Mountrose, my wife partner, with our special guest, Ruth Anderson. Letting all that is not love fall away, a great strategy. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends. You can make these simple strategies part of your life every week. We share them with you, with ourselves and special guests like Ruth. We also have a website with a very extensive website with a lot of books, courses, free downloads, videos, articles. It's gettingthrough.org, gettingthru.org/holistic. And we value your support, and tuition for our courses and other purchases support our mission at awakeningsinstitute.org, our nonprofit organization to create a more loving world, where you can share the message of love with those all around you, and together we can change the world. Thanks again, Ruth. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
My pleasure. Thank you.